My laptop says 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and start because we don't have a lot of time today. And I want to use as much as our time in an open discussion. So first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a conversation about organic waste recycling in Cape Town. My name is Marcela, and today I am going to help out with timekeeping and moderating the discussion. The Food Growers is hosting this event in hopes that it is only the start of a conversation that leads to action. The Cape Town Together Growers Group, the short is CTT FGI, so not so short, but this is a collective of anybody who wants to grow food with the vision to create a food forest out of Cape Town to enable food freedom. It originated during the pandemic to connect entire Cape Town. Erica, who is in this call, you will find her as EI for Erica Inches, can answer questions about the collective. So please do feel free to add your questions and comments in the chat box about the collective for her. So as I mentioned, our schedule is rather tight, and I am going to keep my input to a minimum. So what I want to do now is outline the program. I will also post it in the chat box again. I did it earlier, but for those who are joining in now might not be able to see it. So then you can just kind of follow the program as we go. People are asking if this is being recorded, and indeed it is being recorded. You should see a sign that says recording. If you don't see that, let me know, because we definitely want to keep this recording to share with others. So first, we are delighted to welcome Tahira Gore from the Green Cape Town, or from Green Cape, sorry, who will paint a big picture for us to understand what is happening in this sector in Cape Town and the province. After her, we will invite several people to say a few words about their initiative, and we'll wrap up with an open discussion. As I said, we're recording this for those who weren't able to join, and if you do want the recording, just email us afterwards. With this, would like to now hand it over to Tahira. I will ask you to introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about your work at the Green Cape.
Thank you, Marcela. Marcela, can you just allow me to share screen? I think you can just stop share from your side. Can everyone see? I think you can see my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tahira Gore. I am a circular economy analyst at Green Cape. And today I have the opportunity to present this, to introduce this topic of circular economy waste solution with a focus on organics. So in 2018 and 2019, Cape Townians generated 1.6 to 1.8 million tons of waste. This waste can be broken up into three portions. Recyclable waste, which consists of I think I started going in the wrong direction. So recyclable waste, which consists of high value dry waste that goes into the clear bag for those of us who have a 2-bag system. Non-recyclables that goes into your black bin bag and has low value. And organics, which is all your wet waste, kitchen scraps, and garden waste. It also has low value and is also found in the black bin bag. So each person that year generated 377 to 415 kilograms of waste. 28% of that is organics. That is quite a significant portion of each person's waste. So why has this not been solved already? And why is it still going into our black bin bag? If we try and understand the value of organic waste at a household and municipal solid waste level, it is really at the very bottom of the sought after scale. This is largely due to its contaminated and inconsistent qualities, and is also further enhanced by the fact that it takes long and is costly to process, is of poor quality, is located at far distances in small volumes, and has no real incentive to be beneficiated, at least at an individual level. So why should we bother? From an economic perspective, the majority of the city does not have a 2-bag system. Therefore, by continuing to include organics in our waste streams, we reduce the value of recyclables in our black bin bags. In addition, the separation of organics will also improve the health conditions for the waste sorters and pickers who have to go through the black bin bags to take out the recyclables. From an environmental perspective, it will reduce the leachate that is produced at landfill, which is quite costly to process for the city currently, and the greenhouse gases, which is mainly methane that is generated from landfilling organic waste. And finally, from a legislative perspective, the Western Cape government has implemented an organics landfill ban with 50% to be diverted in 2022 and 100% in 2027. So therefore, it is no longer a matter of should organics be collected and beneficiated, but rather how. The various speakers today will be addressing this question of how. And so I will now hand over to all of them. If you have any further questions and would like more detail, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was short and sweet. Thank you very much. I am very pleased to start our mini presentations. You will notice the list is rather long. I posted the agenda. Everybody has been advised to keep their intervention to 3 minutes. They also know that I'm going to have to abruptly stop them if they go over their time limit. Please think of this as a little bit like speed dating. The idea is not to learn everything about each presentation, but rather to get a sense of the diversity of efforts across Cape Town and to learn 1 or 2 things about each initiative. Our hope is to go a lot deeper on one or several of them in our next conversation. In order to maximize our time, I'm not going to introduce the speakers. I'm going to ask you to say a few things about yourself and then obviously to do your presentation. Please follow the order as is posted on the chat box. And perhaps to keep us moving, you can call on the person who follows you on that list. So with that, Shayne, over to you. I am hoping Shayne is still with us. Shayne, if you're there, can you unmute yourself and begin? It doesn't sound like Shayne is with us at the moment, so I'm gonna go on to Joe from the Oranges City Farm. Joe, would you like to get us going?
Hi, I'm Joe Fitzmaurice. I manage the Oranges City Farm, a urban farming project that was started back in October of 2012. It's we farm on municipal land, and pretty much since the inception of the project, we have been accepting people's food waste. The compost area of the farm was one of the first areas we developed so that it became a place where people could bring us their food waste. Usually it was in 20-liter buckets, either treated with Bokashi bran, which they purchased from us, or we did also, and do today as well, still we accept untreated food waste because we appreciate that for some people the Bokashi is too expensive. In the beginning, we were burying that food waste into trenches that we dug into our plant beds. And as we got the system up and running, we started working it directly into our compost heaps, which is still the practice we use currently. The amount of food waste has steadily grown over the years, and today we receive the food waste from about 200 households, pretty much across the whole of Cape Town. It is quite surprising where people mission in from to drop us their food waste. Challenges, there have been many, but perhaps the one that does stick out still is the control of rodents. Although we have come to see them more and more as allies in a way, because they pull out organic material from the bottom of the piles we create. We then sweep that up and add it to the top of the piles. So in a way, they're helping for us to actually turn our compost. The using of a bucket system also has its challenges. Many people seem to become attached to their buckets for one reason or another. So initially when they were bringing us the buckets, we were washing them. They were not always getting exactly the same bucket back. And that seemed to cause a little bit unhappiness. And so in the drought period of sort of 2018, we decided to change the system, and people now rinse the bucket either at our farm, or they take the bucket home and wash them there. We have found that it is better practice to have somebody who is on the job dealing with the food waste, helping people who bring their buckets. Often they're pretty heavy. It's a job that has to be stayed on top of, and that for us is also a challenge because it's become necessary for us to find the funding to pay someone to do this work. It's vital in the interests of aesthetics and just keeping control over food waste, which is never pretty to look at. So
thank you, Jo. I'm unfortunately going to have to ask you to wrap it up. Do you want to kind of close with a final sentence, and then we'll ask Shayne to come in?
Just to say that, yes, it isn't the prettiest of work, but we believe in the value of what we're doing, and it enables people to make a little contribution towards, environmental health, even though it is quite, in their minds, often quite small. It is collectively significant.
Thank you so much. Shayne, would you like to come in?
Yes. Hi, Marcela. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm using my phone right now, so I don't know if anyone can hear me right now. You can wave your hand, Marcela, if you're hearing me.
Yes,
awesome.
We can hear you.
Awesome. I'm outside, and inside it's quite noisy. My name is Shayne. My name is Shayne Taliona. I live at the old circus, or now the Willow Art Collective, where we started the garden initiative in about 2 years ago. Initially, we started on it as food security or food sovereignty, or just to have ourselves here, since we are a small community of about 35 people. But then later on in 2020, we realized that our soil is not that really good. So for us to have good food, we wanted to improve on the soil, because we know if we give back to the soil, at least we can harvest better crop than what we have. So we started the compost that Willow Collective drops on, drop as you go, zone with Gerard, which is my partner in crime right now. Apparently left for Durban, but yeah. So we started this in January this year. It's not that old, whereas compared to some other people, but yeah, initially right now at the moment we are now collecting something like a ton a week, which we are processing from our neighborhood, which is just Pop 70, and our next door neighbor, which is Salt River Food Market. Yeah, so at the moment we're using the buckets issue, whereas we are providing the buckets and then we collect the buckets when they call in for our pickup. We do twice pickups per week, which is Wednesday and Saturdays. Saturdays, that's when we usually get a lot of it, because on Saturdays, on a regular basis, we're collecting something like 600 kilograms of kitchen waste, which is just from the restaurants around and some coffee shops also. Whereas we're using those buckets, we leave them and then we make them, clean them, and then we leave them clean. It's a bit tricky, and yeah, I can agree with Joe there, because when it comes to cleaning them, it's something else. But yeah, we have been using that. The biggest challenge is only the transportation of getting all these loads at where we stay right now, which is at the Willow Collective. We are using a friend's truck, so at the moment we are sorted with it. But that's at the moment I would say that's our only biggest challenge. I wish we could advise or educate the community on food waste or something like that, have the tools or something like that to do so. But in this platform, I'm pretty sure we can get there, isn't it?
Thank you so much, Shayne. That was wonderful. Really appreciate that. I just want to, before I hand it over to Shireen, remind everybody that we welcome your comments and your questions in the chat box. So please, as things come up, make sure you put them in there so that we can collate them and address them at the end. Shireen, over to you.
Hi, Marcela. Hi, all. Okay, goodness, bear with me. We're new in this game, and Zoom meetings are new to me as well. All right, I'm just going to prepare something very quick. Okay, my name is Shireen. We're based in Mitchells Plain, Westridge. We run a community garden. Part of the criteria for that is us also being home gardeners. So I've been a home gardener since May last year. And the community garden has basically been going since July 2020, which was also July last year. So just the purpose of it obviously was food security based on COVID, where a need has arisen, or the need arised for, as I'd say a block. So we call it the block, which is the area we're living in. That was the focus of that. And that was actually what came about. Just with regards to obviously the theme for 2020. Okay, I'll get to the questions a bit later. Our theme for this year. So when we started, it was food security, but also with regards to obviously growing and then supporting soup kitchens and that type of thing. But then this year we also realized, and I think Shayne alluded to as well, the soil, the quality of the soil, but also then with regards to education. And that was one of the big things. So the focus this year was about waste management, which we then want to implement within our block. On that side. So that is what we started this year. So basically why we actually, and a lot of talk around that was why, was, at the end of the day, grassroots level is where changes need to be made. So a lot of it can be done, and there's lots of initiatives, but I find on the grassroots level is where we actually need to change the mindset. So that was one of the big things as to why actually we wanted to focus on that area. So the one area was with regards to kitchen waste, which is about 30% of what is going actually to our landfill. So it's about get them to action. So to support the actual garden with regards to kitchen waste and the compost and the soil, but also with regards to that, to educate the actual communities with regards to two factors. When your kitchen waste goes to a landfill, what the effects are, and when it goes to a compost bin or compost heap. So that is basically the educational process that we're actually wanting to get through. So hopefully with that, we can start changing the mindsets and people can understand the actions of, which is just something dumping, or actually taking that and making it useful for that. And also at the end of the day, saving the earth and then assisting us as well. So just with regards to the three questions, Marcela, that you actually sent through. So our biggest win, okay, was actually starting the community garden. And we had a lot of support, and also the space was offered to us by our ward councillor. Our hardest challenge, that is, it's very easy when you have an initiative with regards to, no, we must do things, we must actually get a garden going and that type of thing. But the biggest challenge is the actual hands to assist and work in that garden. So that is one of our biggest challenges. The support is there, but just the hands, the constant hands is the challenge that we're having at this stage. And then just the one thing that you said with regards to what would we need to advance us? Okay, so we're looking at basically the bottom-up approach, which is starting from the grassroots level and working it back up. But we need the support from the top down. And that is where I feel at the end of the day, where the bottom-up and the top-down needs to actually meet. We're doing our groundwork, so we actually need the assistance, the guidance, and the support. So I'm hoping that, the overall initiatives, the bigger initiatives that's actually happening within the greater Cape Town area, that support can then go to the smaller boys that are actually now starting and getting the communities to actually think differently. And basically that is it from me. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Shireen. That was wonderful. And please do add anything else that you would like to in the chat box, because the idea is to continue the conversation there. With that, I want to hand it over to Michelle. Michelle, do you want to take it?
Thanks very much, and thanks for this opportunity to co-learn together. I'm with the Scarborough Environmental Group. We've been in operational action since about 2018. So we're in our 4th year of our composting learning. We activated the composting because it was driven by environmental concerns. We are aware of how much the volume going into landfill of a very precious resource and the implications that had or has on, for example, climate change. We also were trying to address the human-wildlife conflict. We live in quite a pristine area bordering the Cape Point sector of the Table Mountain National Park. And we've also been composting dog poo since that time, which was also something that we were trying to address the conflict within the community with excess dog poo, etc., etc. We take that off our beaches. So our solution really to everything was just compost the problems. Important to know, we had no budget for this. We have no budget for this. It's run by volunteers. We've now created one position. Someone comes 3 times a week to clean the buckets and empty them. We worked with what was available and appealed to the community for containers and set something up, which was pretty interesting. So our system maximizes vertical space. We use old broken JoJo tanks, like 2,000-liter JoJo tanks, and then some stacking units of worm farms. So what have we learned in all of this? We've learned so much about composting, working with community. Everything is dynamic. We're constantly adapting to things. What was really important is what we communicate to our community all the time. We've had to make it as easy as possible for people to participate in this. And we still don't even have the buy-in of everybody. It is something about changing mindsets and changing behavior. So we basically take everything, including cooked waste. We don't work with bokashi. We have a different system within the tanks. It's nice to work with multiple tanks at the same time, because if a problem develops, you jump onto the next one. We also now have developed a little service that people can have the kitchen waste delivered, taken from their door and taken down to the center. And it's a very simple system of drop your bucket off at any time and swap out, take a new one. And as I say, someone comes 3 times a week to empty that. It is the rest of the time run by volunteers though. And that's something to always bear in mind. You need a champion, you need a local hero to do this. Aims over the next 12 months, or our goals, is to just get better at what we're doing. We're now at a wonderful stage of tweaking our methodology. We want to compost dog poo a lot faster than what we're doing. And then and that obviously we use just on trees, but our main compost, we want to just really make really good compost at this stage. And that's where we're at, is making good compost. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful, and reach out to us at any time if we can help with any of your initiatives.
Thank you so much, Michelle. You also remind me that I forgot to suggest that those who are presenting, if you want to be contacted or want to make that offer out there, please put your details in the chat box so people can contact you directly. We have Angeline from Muizenberg next on our list, but I'm actually not sure that she's in the call. Angeline, if you are in, can you unmute yourself, please? I don't think that she's been able to join us yet. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Imran to join us. I believe, Imran, you and one of your colleagues will participate. Please go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay, can you guys see me as well? Hey, okay, cool. I'm Imran, I'm from Guerrero House. And I've been asked to talk about the Clovelly Village solutions. So a friend of mine, Kyoko, is part of the Clovelly Can Network, initiated this this initiative, and it's in West Bank. It's a garden in West Bank, a community garden. And myself and Guerrero House, we were just brought in to do the training and transferring of information. I went back there last Saturday for another workshop on plant propagation, and we actually purchased from them the compost they've been making since this first workshop, which happened in January. So the cool thing, I just want to bring the aspect of context-specific solutions. So Guerrero House, we've been doing training for the past 4 or 5 years, and our big focus is on context-specific solutions. So it's really cool to hear all these different solutions for different contexts. Like a community garden context solution is appropriate in certain spaces. A single worm farm is appropriate in some spaces for an individual. Bokashi is appropriate for some people. And I really enjoy hearing these many different solutions. And I'm empathizing with the fact that we need to make it sustainable, bringing in the economic aspect as well. Someone mentioned that it needs a champion, and to have a champion there, they need to be compensated for their time. They need the training. So our focus always is on how whichever.
I'm muted. You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. Continue, Imran.
No worries. Whichever solution's been applied, how do we get it to work in a way that people who are practicing can make money from it, or carve out the right livelihood doing it, yeah? So that it can become sustainable. I'm wondering if Kyoko is online, and and available, because then she can share a bit more context about the Clovelly solution.
Okay. Hi. I thought maybe Imran can talk, but basically what we do as a CAN in Clovelly is to, when there is workshops, we collect garden refuse, especially composting, something that involves compost. We can collect compost materials from Clovelly residents, and sometimes already made up compost or seedling or plants, and then I deliver to the workshop. And also we ask the members of garden group in West Bank itself, when they make compost, they provide their compost to the workshop, which happened at last workshop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think, is there still time left, or is that it?
I think I'm going to stop you there just so that everybody can get a chance to speak, cool. But we're going to have time, I think, at the end to have a conversation. So I'm just looking at my list quickly. Michelle, you have already gone. I'm sorry. Johan from Streetscapes, please take it away.
Hey guys, I'm Johan from Streetscapes. It's great to meet everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Streetscapes is a registered NPO offering work-based rehabilitation and a safe living space for people who are homeless. We have roughly 70 to 100 beneficiaries on our program throughout the year. We've been running as a project for roughly 5 years. And so we operate 4 urban farms and 2 inner city cleansing teams. We have composting tanks on all 4 of our urban farms, primarily composting our own garden offcuts, garden waste, etc. And we actively sort of market our composting sites on social media, and we collect roughly 10 to 15 bokashi bins per week per garden. So those are your classic 20 kg bokashi bins. Most of our clientele typically bring them to sites, so we don't have to go and fetch anything. And as soon as someone drops it off, we wash it for them and we return it to them immediately. We've also realized that people are quite attached to their bins, so as soon as they bring it in, we wash it and we hand it back. We typically use roughly 90% of our compost back into our gardens. Soil quality, again, in the CBD is not incredible. So most of it goes back in, and it's worked really well. Our produce is growing beautifully. And then the remaining 10% of our products, we add into value add products like small sort of garden plants to sell. And as hopefully going forward, we'll be able to bag it and sell it as a value add product itself. And then I suppose our biggest challenge at the moment, similar to OZCF, is the pests. And so we've got the rats and the roaches, and I call them interns. And so that's us.
Thank you, Johan. That was a nice note to end on a positive note. Maggie, would you like to go next, please?
Yeah, just
you've got it on mute.
You should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, it's coming.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margie, and I'm from Cork Bay. This is Cork Bay, beautiful seaside village. Just trying to get to my next slide. And this is Cork Bay on Monday mornings. The majority of Cork Bay residents are not separating their waste. Some are, so quite a few separate their recycling, but many residents and pretty much most of the restaurants, of which there are about 10, are not separating their waste. So that waste is being taken by the municipality, but also by private waste collectors to the landfill at Muizenberg. So it's interesting to note that restaurants actually need more than the municipal collection. They actually need about 2 or 3 collections of waste per week. And as we all know, there is no away when we throw something away. And in the situation of Kalk Bay, the somewhere that we have to throw is Vrygrond and is the dump, which is close to Vrygrond and Muizenberg. So it really doesn't feel cool to be making a mess in other people's neighborhoods, mess and flies and smells. So what have we done as a group of residents in Kalk Bay since November 2020? We found a garden space, which isn't easy. There's very little space in Kalk Bay for composting, but we found somebody who was willing to share their garden. We've accepted waste from 2 restaurants and about 10 residents. We've employed a very strong man to assist us once a week. We wouldn't be where we are now without the help of Elisha. We've built about 20 compost heaps. We've harvested about 100 bags of compost. We've sold about 50 bags and given about 50 bags away to Kalk Bay, Gugulethu, Ocean View and Boerkaap. And here are just some pictures of the process that we follow. We collect waste from Olympia Cafe and one other restaurant, Courtyard Cafe, twice a week. As everyone who's familiar with compost knows how to do it, we layer the green and the brown, sometimes challenged by a shortage of brown, but we always have enough greens. And then we actually, sorry, next slide. We follow a two-phase process. The first process is letting a compost heap sit for 6 weeks of hot composting. So we've learned how to use a compost thermometer and we try and keep it at 60 degrees for 2 weeks. We've also had to learn to manage flies, which are probably one of our biggest, I think our biggest challenge is flies. No rodents so far, but we have had some challenges with flies. Which is obviously a concern in a residential area. And then the second part of the process is a cold composting process, which is 6 weeks of letting the compost sit once it's been mixed with charcoal dust and rock dust. And this process is in order to let the microbes thrive. So we end up with rather a lovely product, which we've been able so far to sell for 50 Rand a bag. So our learning so far and the benefits we've experienced, there is a small space in which we can grow vegetables, so the compost has helped to enrich the soil. We've also managed to make enough money to create one part-time job for the man who helps us once a week. And we've also experienced the benefits of working together and building relationships with one another, and with some young people who come into Kalk Bay once a week. Why did we do this? Because we wanted to take responsibility for our own waste. We don't want to make a mess in other people's spaces, and we feel very strongly that waste management is an issue of environmental justice. We want to find a way to love the earth and do what we can to mitigate climate change. We really wanted to learn more about composting and the opportunities it offers, especially with regard to job creation. And we also wanted to make compost to share with other community gardens across Cape Town. As I said earlier, there's not a lot of space in Kalk Bay, so under lockdown, when everybody else was starting gardens, we felt, well, we didn't have much space to start a garden, but we knew we had lots of kitchen waste and garden waste, which we could use to make compost to share and create networks of solidarity across our divided city. What have we learned? Some of the biggest lessons. The setup costs for composting are low, but transport, as somebody else mentioned earlier, is needed for some of the inputs. And I think this is something that we need to look at as a region. How can we maybe share transport resources to enable other compost spaces to thrive? Composting is not difficult, but it does require strong manual labor. Water is an essential component for compost making, And I think the biggest lesson of all, composting needs a lot of space, and Cook Bay will never be able to compost all of its waste. We need and want to explore the use of biodigesters to use.
Thank you, Maggie. This is probably a good place to stop you because we have a few more speakers. If you want to sort of add more of what is in your presentation, I invite you to do it in the chat box. Is that okay?
That's cool. This is the last slide if anybody just wants to have a look.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maggie. This was wonderful. Next, and this is going to be our last neighborhood level initiative before we move on to sort of the larger scale initiatives. So Chuma from Earth 81, if you want to go ahead, please.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Chuma Mgcoyi, and I'm actually an occupant in a site called Earth 81 in town, in Tambuskloof. So in 2013, we were a group of guys started a project called Kisanabanye. We started a garden, but obviously when you build a garden, you must start with your soil fertility. And compost became our main issue, where we had restaurant from the neighborhood that would come and support us with give us kitchen waste from the restaurant. And we had like 6 boxes of compost where we would actually turn that kitchen waste and mixed more carbon, also mixing nitrogen based and carbon based to make compost, focusing on the food garden. But over the years, because since 2014, it was an experiment to us. We had a lot of challenges around neighborhood, the neighbors complaining about how smelly, and that's when we started introducing things like bukashi, part of the process, because it consumed too much labor. And then we even the restaurant, sometimes we had a relationship with the restaurant, that the restaurant when bringing the kitchen waste would actually also support financially for us to actually handle their waste. So the person who would tend the compost would actually get the donation from the restaurant to continue with the compost. So over the years, to just give everyone a picture, in F81, it's a farm itself. So since '94, Andre introduced a lot of, started farming with animals. So we have pony and sheep and goats, chickens and geese. I could name as much more, rabbits and everything. But you find that how people bring the kitchen waste. So we had over the years a restaurant specifically, but over the years also the community, the neighborhood always bring kitchen waste individually within the space. But we don't actually have like a one container to put the kitchen waste in. So you will find, so we had then one garden, but now in the site, there are more gardens developed over the years, and that needed more people to actually now needing more soil, fertile soil, which is compost. So we built new compost tips for the new gardens, but everyone would actually, for the neighborhood, would actually bring the kitchen waste, and sometimes the kitchen waste will be fed to the animals, because the animals sleep in one yard and they poo there, and sometimes the poo itself, it stays for over the years and it tends to be a good compost. So during the pandemic, we started an initiative of actually helping other neighborhood gardens, like Book Up, even Willow Arts and Observatory. Like if one wants a compost, I would actually offer to actually, because the work would be you draining the compost from the animals. But at the same time, on the side, actually empowering people to actually start building their own compost heap. So that is happening on another level. So so we were focusing on composting to improve our soil conditions, which is for the garden. And some of our compost, it's not just the recycled waste, which is the kitchen waste, the recycling kitchen waste, but also the yard waste, things like cardboard. And in Tambuskloof, there's a lot on the road of like wild plum trees, leaves that also are always on the floor. sometimes you will pick also those and actually put them directly in your soil, just part of bringing that fertility in your soil. So as everyone, everyone, like we don't have like a fixed system of collecting all the kitchen waste, because as I'm saying, there's like different individuals that actually also have different gardens. So one can start in their household of like starting to actually collect the kitchen waste from the household and for your garden. So individually are doing that in their own spaces, but at the same time we have one kraal where everyone can just dig there and actually have a nice compost. And also we realized that even over the years we got like a support from even Reliance Compost, but we will always want to actually improve the soil itself, and by mixing different types, which is our own and other different types that are in the farm, to actually find for a fertile one for our gardens. So yeah, I think so to introduce more microorganisms in the soil, and I'm actually honored to be here today and listening to all these solutions, because I think every community should actually start having like a waste management within local and building those local. So yeah.
Thank you. That is such a good place to end. I think we can only agree with that final statement. We are going to transition now to sort of the larger scale initiatives. We have two presentations, so I'm going to ask you to bear with us. I know we all want to start the open discussion, but we only have two more people, and then keeping track of some of the questions you posted in the chat box. Please continue to do that. And with that, I want to hand it over to Julien.
Good afternoon, everybody. Julien Biobin. I will post the details in the chat because there's too much to say about the biobin. So about 3 months ago, I was standing filthy, smelly, etc. at a major retailer distribution center in KZN, and I was proud. And this was a definite win, because for the first time in South Africa, there was a major retailer that does compost on site, and we had finished transferring the waste from a 6.5 cubic meter biobin onto an aerated floor mat that does on-site composting. So today, 3 months later, we've saved the client about 30,000 rands in transport. They have about, I would say, a good 35 cubes of compost sitting there. And also what's nice is that this major retailer is tied with Fruit and Trees for Africa. So I truly, truly hope that this compost will actually go into feeding people, as opposed to going on a golf course, which normally happens with normal compost. Another win as well is definitely when we heard that one of our major clients, which is an on-site waste management company, had reached the point of 90% deviation of waste from landfill on one of their sites. But a definite challenge has been, after conducting successful trials, cleaning up waste areas, doing what we said we were going to do, major corporates and listed companies for a few rand decide to make away with the solution. I don't mind if it's not only our solution, and because there's lots of food waste deviation initiatives, but to go back to landfilling, I think, is a shame for people who declare billions in dividends. I don't understand. So to me, landfilling is too easy and too cheap as we speak. And also what we found is that in most satellite towns and in small towns, there are no composting plants for us to bring our compost to. So we are looking for community gardens. All right, the one thing that would advance our project, I think, is that customers demand that their retailers as well as their suppliers be more conscious of the way they treat their organic waste. But also government needs to start implementing the laws that they have put in place. I was a bit shocked when I phoned the Department of Environment the other day, and they told me they don't even know what fines they are going to apply to people who don't want to comply. So also, I think that it's time for compost to go back into feeding stomachs as opposed to more rich areas, etc. I'm not being nasty, but that's the way I think. Thank you. 3 minutes are over.
Thank you, Julien. I appreciate that. Now we are delighted to welcome Melanie from the Organics Recycling Association of South Africa. Melanie, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, sorry. Hi, I'm Melanie Ludwig. I'm the chairperson of the Organics Recycling Association. And we are an industry body that represents all of those businesses that are involved in the chain of taking organic waste and processing it into valuable new products. Please have a look at our website. It's orasa.org.za. And that has a list of all our members. We started in the Western Cape and we've now got a new committee in Gauteng as well. We have over 36 members that are involved in organics recycling. And these businesses charge a fee to waste generators to collect and recycle the organic waste into new products. That can be through composting, anaerobic digestion, or fly farming. And we also have those that supply compostable products and also bins and transport solutions for organic waste. So a lot of our members have been in the business for 10 years or more. So we have the experience to assist waste generators to divert their waste from landfill. We have been working with some of the municipalities in light of the new landfill ban on organic waste. Environmental Affairs in the Western Cape has brought into a new law where 50% of organic waste needs to be diverted by 2022 and 100% by 2027. So we've been working with several municipalities to help them draw up an organics diversion plan. In 2019, we started talking to the City of Cape Town about what their plan was going to be. And the city has responded amazingly, and they've actually been doing a pilot study doing accepting food waste at their drop-offs and also having pop-up drop-offs for residential food waste. So that's also very exciting. We want to look at the full cycle of organic waste. So we want to prevent methane from being produced in the landfill, and we want to see organic material going back into the soil so we can capture carbon and we can reverse climate change. So we're now also involved in regenerative agriculture and looking at how that organic waste can have massive benefits. We're looking for projects to support, so please contact me. I'll put my contact details in the chat, and we're happy to chat more. We know about composting, so if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melanie. This is really wonderful. I'm gonna start with the questions that are in the chat box. If you have additional questions, please raise your hand, and I will make sure to give you a chance to ask your queries. So one of the questions that came out, Melanie, is actually for you, and maybe I want to throw it back to the person who asked. The question was, what benefits would small businesses get from joining Orasa? Is your question answered by Melanie's presentation, or would you like to expand on what you like to know? And I'm trying to track back to the person who asked this question. If you recall, Himkar Singh, if you're there, would you like to confirm whether or not your question has been answered? Okay, it's possible that he isn't with us right now. So let me move on to the next one. This question, I think, was addressed to one of the earlier speakers, but I feel like it's relevant to perhaps all of the local level initiatives. The question was, who participates in the waste sorting collection, and how did you enlist people and households? Would anybody from the speakers like to address that question?
Marcela, I can, for Scarborough, just mention how we started. So we piloted initially, and we actually went to 5 or 10 households and gave them a container, and that's how we got started. So we actually approached some people. So you can consider doing that. Approach some people who would be reliable, who'd be interested in it, and get yourself started in that way. And after that, once you are established and you've gone through your learning lessons and you can then grow, just make it easy for people to get involved by providing them with containers if you can. But it's very much through the community networks. We've got WhatsApp groups. Yeah, you literally go out and canvas people. If you're looking to run a business, though, that's a slightly different story. We can't give too much advice on that side, but I hope that kind of answers your question.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I see that Hinkar is here, and he would like for you, Melanie, to expand a little bit more on the benefits to small businesses to join the network.
Okay, so no problem. So as an organization, we actually need small businesses to join us so that we can be the voice of the industry. Because before, we found that when we were interacting with government as just small business owners, we didn't really have any real effect. But when we've actually united as an organization, we have had opportunities to both speak to the national government. So in 2018, we actually gave a large amount of input into the norms and standards for composting. And we are also currently commenting on two new legislations which affect organic waste, which is the extended producer responsibility regulations, as well as the norms and standards for organic waste treatment options. So we definitely need the support of all companies. A lot of companies that are involved in organics recycling want to join us because it gives them also some it gives them an opportunity to interact with others and to learn from each other. So we do have educational events where we used to be in-person events, now we only have online events, so that there's a sharing of experiences as well as knowledge. So that is also very helpful. A lot of our members have our logo on their websites when they are tendering for government projects, and to give them authenticity as companies. So those are some of the reasons why it's a good idea to join us. And we need support from companies all over South Africa, because we really need to increase our footprint around the whole country. So that's also a reason why we need the support of the industry, so that we can make things happen and see the changes and grow that industry and unlock organic waste so that it can be processed into valuable products.
Thank you, Melanie. The next question, again, wasn't addressed to a particular speaker. And here I want to invite really anybody to answer, because it's obviously not a very simple one. The question is, what happens to the compost? Is it for own use? If so, how much does it save, given the time and labor it takes? Is there an economic argument to doing this, in addition to the obvious moral argument? Would anybody like to respond to that? The economic argument of composting.
I can respond if...
Go for it.
Okay, so I have my own business, so we compost about 50 to 60 tons a month of organic waste of various types, garden waste, food waste, industrial wastes, fat trap waste. So we operate as a waste processor. We have a gate fee. And if you look at any overseas business model, you have to charge a fee to process the waste, because you are taking responsibility for that waste and you need to handle it correctly. So in America, Canada, and the European Union, all of that, there's a gate fee required. Your compost that you sell, you're never going to make enough money, because food waste is 80% water. So your volumes of your final compost are often very small, even though it's a very good quality compost. So you need to make sure that you are taking the standpoint that you are saving on landfill costs. So a client would have to pay to have their waste landfilled. So instead of paying to landfill it, they pay to have it processed, i.e. composted or put into an anaerobic digester. So depending on the technology as well, there's also different economic reasons for why you would need to charge a varying gate fee. So that can be dependent on if it's a soldier fly farm, which is high capital costs, or an anaerobic digester, or you're looking at a low capital cost composting facility. So there can be huge variations on that. Another way you can look at it is transport costs. If your landfill is located very far out of town, there's a massive transport cost. If you can locate your composting facilities closer to where the waste is produced, that's where you can actually save your client money, and you can get them to pay you rather than another company to transport it far distances. So definitely accepting the responsibility for this waste, you need to be charging a fee. And unfortunately, if you offer the service for free, it creates this expectation that composting is of food waste in particular is very simple, no odors, no vermin problems, and that you are wanting to accept donations of food waste when in fact you're actually providing the waste generator with a service. So it's a mindset change. So just be careful of offering these services for free, because that will create this expectation. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Julien, is your point related to this particular question? If so, please go ahead.
Yes, indeed. And I would like to join Melanie in saying that there's gate fees, first of all, to process the thing, but to join what I was saying earlier, the gate fees by government are still too cheap, so that people, they don't really want to recycle their food waste. There's also a change of mentality that needs to happen. It does, instead of saying deviating from landfill, people should start saying recycling organic waste. It needs to become the resource that it is, as opposed to being waste. Thanks.
Thank you, Julien. That's really helpful. So there's a question about volunteers, and I want to put that on hold because I know pretty much all of you have an experience with volunteers, but Maggie has raised a point that I think is related to the conversation we're having. If anybody has information on the city, what measures they will be taking to reach the targets for 2022 and 2027. I know we have Noel in the call, at the risk of putting you on the spot, Noel, but if anybody else, maybe Green Cape, maybe Tahira, if you want to say a few things of what local government might have in place or in mind.
I can post my chat to say that the city is working on an organic strategy. Unfortunately, it's not ready to be released yet, so we haven't seen this, but we know it's coming because we had an event last week and they couldn't share it with us last week. So the most recent update is that it's not available yet for sharing, but I know it's coming out soon.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn to the subject of volunteers. There were a few points raised around the importance of having a sustainable plan because we all run out of energy as volunteers. And I want to start with Joe, see if you want to share some of your experience at the Oranges City Farm.
Yes, Marcela, when our project was new, there was lots of manpower, lots of young men who were happy to get involved with this process. But as time went by, that became less the case. And I had to actually put 2 very well qualified farmers on the job a couple of times a week just to keep up and to keep the buckets washed and available for people to collect. And the Oranjes City Farm bore that cost for almost 6 years. And as I said earlier, during the drought, we realized that there was another way of doing this. And in about 2018, we actually introduced a little clip card system. So people pay 100 Rand to drop off 10 buckets of food waste. And that money goes towards paying the salary of someone who is employed 4 days a week to assist people with their waste, to wash their buckets, and also to work the food waste into our compost heaps. And we've actually found that staying on top of the game, it has become an income generator, particularly because part of our outreach is to become involved in other community farming projects across the townships, across Greater Cape Town, and we have been able to donate or rather sell significant amounts of compost to projects who are not yet able to make it for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to say something about working with volunteers? either from the presenters today or people who are involved as volunteers themselves, perhaps? You can just unmute yourself and come in.
Okay, I'll go. That's for us. Like when we started the first compass, I think it was mostly volunteers who actually helped to start. But even now, that as I was saying, that we during the pandemic, there were people started growing more food on the side. So also from the can, the Campus Group can, we had a lot of support around. Even I think like a month ago, there was a compost built in one of the gardens from the neighborhood. So we get volunteers. But because, as I'm saying, that these are small patches and it's not like in a big scale. So it's gardens that actually accept volunteers. But also on the economic side, one of the guys on the site actually decided to actually start selling compost in this. So he does his own compost and then he sells to whoever comes. But he doesn't always have it, but he always because the process itself takes time. So he always
Thank you. I lost that last bit, but it might have been my internet connection. There are several questions about local government. Before we go there, and I believe Alison, who's from the city of Cape Town, might be able to share some of your thoughts, perhaps. But before we get there, there were two practical questions that I thought I would put out there in case people have sort of practical responses. One was about a dog poo, and that was mentioned as one of the inputs, if anybody wants to expand on that a little bit more. And then the other question was about soldier flies. And the question is anybody actually doing this in Cape Town or in South Africa in this call right now who would want to share a little bit more on that?
Hi, I've said it several times in the chat. Dog poo and worms go well together. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Anybody who wants to comment on the soldier flies?
Just to say thank you for the suggestions about putting shade cloth and sawdust on top of heaps. We'll be following that advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay, so let's maybe turn back to the relationship between local government, neighborhood or community-based initiatives, residents. Alison, would you be happy to respond to some of the questions around how to best liaise with city officials, what kind of efforts or thoughts there are in involving residents' input into the strategy that Tahira mentioned?
Thanks a lot. I think I'm here with more questions than answers today. But it's very cool to hear about all your community initiatives, and I think Marcela, well done for bringing all these people together. I would like to engage more with you guys, or our team would like to engage more. My question was just on, do any of you have other city contacts in terms of community agriculture? And if so, which departments do you contact, or which, because we are trying to put together a picture in our heads of how it currently works and how we as the solid waste department can interact with the rest of the system in terms of the food waste and the food system. So that was really my question. In terms of the organic waste strategy that the city is busy with, I think Tahira did cover that. There's quite a lot of processes like the IDP, etc., which all our strategies have to go through internally before they are made available for comment. So we are kind of stuck in some of those processes, but we do want to engage with various stakeholders.
Thank you, Alison. Would anybody like to respond to Alison's query about who else you might be engaging with at City of Cape Town, or maybe at Province? I don't know if your question was about Province as well, but I would be curious to know.
I think the silence speaks volumes.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think this is really highlighting the biggest need. I mean, just observing what's happened since lockdown with community gardens starting up, and so many people on WhatsApp groups just saying they just don't even have the time or the energy to engage with government because it's such a mission. So, you know, I really don't want to point any fingers, but just say I think that's a real challenge to all of us. We have to find ways to bridging the divide between citizens who are really motivated to get things done and officials within the city who want to get stuff done. We've got to find ways to creatively collaborate.
Thank you for that,
I
Maggie.
mean,
Yeah, please go ahead.
Spot on there, Margie. I mean, in fact, so you're speaking to NK, and I'm actually joining this call from Durban. Yeah, stayed some time for a bit in Cape Town, but back in Durban now. And how we found to be engaging the local stakeholders, or rather government per se, is actually putting it as a key sort of political priority. And how we've been able to do it on this end was essentially to strike a chord using the Sister Cities program. So what this means is that from a local level, there are cities who sort of create these bilateral and these political type relationships with cities abroad. So for example, the city of Durban has strong ties with the city of Bremen. And through that sort of relationship, it sort of brought about a global aspiration. So the city of Durban's sort of key sort of vision is to be the cleanest and greenest city by 2020. And in fact, that goal was achieved in 2019. And just drawing in the political will to have an audacious sort of motto that the city has lent a lot of, firstly, political will around the need to create a clean and green city. Secondly, it also drives a lot of the media houses to support that narrative and to also gear themselves to wanting to find out about these clean and green initiatives. Secondly, what we've also found is that Durban is particularly a very under-resourced city in the way of private sector. I mean, we only house about 5 headquarters of a lot of the large firms listed in the JSE. And through that initiative, it becomes easier to sort of draw in the CEOs of these JSE listed firms and get them to get behind some of these green and clean initiatives. Because again, they are tenants to the city, and gearing themselves for these green initiatives also gives them a sense of political will. Thirdly, I think it's also about proximity to leadership, right? And I think it becomes addressing the real sort of, I know that Cape Town has a strong sort of tourism aspect to it, right? And eco-tourism, I think, is a very strong feature that Cape Town has. And communicating that strong eco-tourism aspect, even though somewhat is unrelated or might seem unrelated to sort of sustainability practice in the space, but actually lends itself to opening up relationships with city officials and stuff. And these are some of the lessons that we've taken from the city of Durban. Thanks.
Thank you so much. This is really so helpful.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead, Andrea.
Just I want to, I share a document that comes from this is for Alison. I share a document that comes from the city of Cape Town that offers support to the urban garden. It's the economic development department that works in this area, and it's also the department that is involved in some way because we don't have a formal engagement, but in the Western Food Forum, we have formally the engagement with the province, but we don't have formally the engagement with the city. We have people from the city that participate to the forum. and this is maybe one of the problems we don't have but I think to start to connect the people that are inside of the city already work in this area can be a good starting. Also to avoid to have different departments that start with different initiatives without speaking to each other.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for sharing that document too. For those who haven't seen it, it's in the chat box. Anybody else who would like to come in? I don't see any hands raised at this point.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we as an organization, as the Organics Recycling Association, especially in the Western Cape, we've navigated, first of all, setting up composting facilities, and then also the city, Cape Town, and as well as provincial governments. So we do know who to talk to. So if you want some advice, you can also contact us, and we can also give you the contact details for those people. But it is a little complicated when you're navigating these things to try and understand. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Melanie. That's really helpful. I mean, I know that also Green Cape has developed lots of great material, and with this recent meeting, that obviously is too recent to share maybe great details, but Tahir, I'm sure that you'll be able to share information as it becomes available. Are there any questions or comments? We've actually run ahead of schedule. It was my rush of getting you all to speak only for 3 minutes. I'm so sorry to have rushed you, but this is yet another opportunity, if you didn't get a chance to give your whole story, to come in and do that. So I invite you to unmute yourself and comment. No need to raise your hand. Although there is a question in the chat box. Himkar says, do any of you export compost? Is there a market to do so?
I think I would have issues with exporting compost, because that would just destroy the carbon benefits of the compost. So my sense is we really need to be promoting very local solutions. We need to localize. So for me, exporting compost would be a contradiction, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Maggie. Shayne, would you like to say something, or are you just supporting Maggie's point? All right, everybody seems to be agreeing with you, Maggie. Go ahead.
Well, at the risk of saying too much, can I also just add, with regard to the city, it would be really great if the city could trial some small biodigesters. We know that there's a huge biodigester, but we really need small biodigesters at local levels. And again, the community gardens, or the network of community gardens, could provide a very good space to trial biodigesters, because most of them are linked with community kitchens. So if waste collection could lead to biodigestion, which would create gas for cooking meals at community kitchens, that creates a whole circular economy.
Thank you, Maggie. So guys, we are, what's gonna happen now is I'm gonna do a very short poll, because we wanna know if you want to hear more about any of the initiatives that we have presented today. The invitation is also to do a follow-up after this call if you have any specific suggestions, or you yourself would like to present something in more depth, or suggestions for future conversations. So with that, I'm gonna run the poll. I hope you can all see it now. I invite you to spend a couple of seconds answering that. And then as we wait for people to answer, I am going to hand it over to Erica.
Thank you, Marcela. Thank you very much, everybody that has joined this call and spent time explaining their initiatives. It is very clear that we need a composting center in every neighborhood and a worm farm in every kitchen, and it is about localization. And we need to start seeing waste not as poo, but human manure, and talk about maggots and black flies, and using waste collectors like having rats turn your compost for you. We definitely need to change our language and see waste as a resource. There is no way when we throw rubbish away, as Margie has so eloquently said. The compost needs to go to feed people and not go on a golf course, as Julien has pointed out. The landfilling is too easy and too cheap. I think the localization will definitely help with that. Grassroots level is where the change happens, as Sharina said, and as everybody has alluded to, if not said, we need to regenerate the soil and regenerate the soil under our feet where we are, and share the knowledge, share the resources, all the way to sharing resources between communities. Some have more manure, others have more leaves. And that is part of the education. As Michelle has said, you need a local hero, a champion, and their solution is to compost the problem, which is a fantastic way of handling it. And look at the waste specialists, your rats and roaches interns, find ways to work with nature. And as Tahir said, individuals can be collectively significant. From neighborhood composting to lobbying legislation. And lobbying is important too. It's important to engage with government before the legislation is set. Make sure that the needs from bottom up is fed into government so that the correct legislation is put in place the first time. Challenge is to find ways for government to enable this, to find a way to bridge the gap and the divide and collaborate. And I think this is where this forum is a great start. The Enabling Urban Agriculture Work Group in collaboration with the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership and CTT Food Growers Initiative could be a really, really strong lobbying group to enable urban agriculture, and waste is just one part of it. So I hope everybody gets involved, participates, and continues this conversation into action that really is clean and green. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Erica. I think that's a really good place to wrap things up. I've just shared the results. It's clear that we all want to hear from all of them, all of the initiatives. So we are going to consolidate this video so that it can be shared further. We have the chat that has also been saved, and we'll send you some kind of high-level notes so that we can all figure out what the next steps are. There are lots of things that we can do. We can have more conversations. I'm particularly very excited that we had city officials here today and Tahir from the Green Cape. I think the moment is now to continue this conversation. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Have a lovely rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.